So for this video, we're going to be looking at the King of Cups. And if you haven't seen my video on all of the cup court cards, then take a look at those because there's a lot of links between all of these and it kind of tells a great story. So I highly recommend going back and looking at those, but let's go ahead and get started here. So we're going to start with the RWS card. And I find that it's very similar to the Queen of Cups, except he's actually right in the ocean. So he's right in the midst of all of these emotions because water represents emotions. There's waves crashing. There's a fish jumping out of the water. There's a boat in the background, but he's not bothered by all of this. So things are going on around him, but he is very stoic. Look at the look on his face, very stoic, very solid. He has a great foundation right there and on like a stone foundation right in the middle of the ocean. So he's not moving, nothing's gonna happen. And just a very solid character that has mastered emotions, but also mastered intellect. And he has a great balance of those things. So if you look at his left hand, he has a scepter. So a scepter is a symbol of authority, is a symbol of power. It's a symbol of just reaching a certain level or position. And he's reached that. Now, I think that oftentimes when we get to positions like this, one of the things to watch out for is pride. And that's a very important part of this whole conversation I want to have, because being in this position means different things for different people. And so we want to kind of discuss that. I'll give you my perspective on it. And he's wearing that fish around his neck on a chain. And it's a symbol of one of his accolades. It's like he's awarded himself this prize for reaching this level. So kind of a maturity, a growth in this card, but there are some drawbacks and some things to watch out for. So let's move on here and let's look at the energy of this card and its astrological associations. We know that it is all the water signs, so Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio, kind of blended together, but different systems will place emphasis on, or different decks really will place emphasis on different parts or different astrological signs. So for example, in the Celestial Tarot, we have Cancer. We have the symbol for Cancer. We have a crab there. And then in the Tarot Spirit down here, we have the symbol for Pisces being, with emphasis being placed on that. And that's just because of different organizations like the Golden Dawn, or depending on what deck maker made it, they just had different, I guess, backgrounds. And so don't let that throw you off. But let's move on and talk about the Thoth system. Now, in the Thoth system, this is the Knight of Cups. Now, I want to point that out right off the bat because I've done videos before where I didn't emphasize that. But the King of Cups and the Knight of Cups are in the same positions, but with different decks. So in RWS, this is the King, comes after the Queen. The Knight comes after the Queen in the Thoth system. Just wanted to put that out there and place emphasis on that so as we go through, you're not thrown off. So I find that this card gives us a lot of keys to understanding what it takes to get to this level. So first of all, he has a green armor, which represents the heart chakra. And he has wings, which represent air. So he has a balance of air, which is intellect, and a balance of the heart. And he's using that to leap over something, to rise. He's going up. So down here, you have a peacock. Now, peacocks are very prideful. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they're prideful. They just seem very prideful because of the way they walk. They have these big, elaborate feathers. They're just over the top. And in order to get to where the King of Cups is, we have to make that leap over the ego and over the pride, and that is very difficult. You can see the horse looking back, like, "You sure about this? Look at what we could have." But it's something that is a constant challenge and an everyday struggle, and that's why I think it's very rare that we get to this point of the King of Cups. I, for one, am not even close. So I want to look at the Tabula Mundi because it also has, it tells a wonderful story and gives us another piece of this puzzle. Now, I don't want to focus on the entire card yet, but if we look right here in the middle, there's a circle. And within that circle, there are three key components. There's a wishbone here, There's a camel that's looks like it's resting or kind of tired. And then there is the front of a boat with a woman with wings on it. And if we look at those clues, it takes us to certain cards. So the first card it takes us to is the Seven of Swords. If you look at the Seven of Swords, you can see that camel right there with its head down. So this is pointing us to a sword, which is air, as one of the keys. So balancing air in our lives, balancing our intellect in our lives, having that being a part that's incorporated. But in order to do that, this is an inward journey. So this card right here, all of the sevens really, the swords point in. And they're pointing in at this other sword saying you need to go within in order to accomplish this. This camel did not accomplish it on its intellect alone. It had to go inward. There's a missing piece to the puzzle. You have the moon in the background. And then you have this symbol here, this heptagram, which is a sign of divine assistance, which is an inward assistance. That points us to something vital. And you can see the moon up there, but it points us to the high priestess. Now, what else is on the high priestess that connects to this card? Right there, a camel. Now, and she also has the moon there. So the high priestess is all about the inward journey, all about really connecting with our higher self in order to figure out what's going on for ourselves and really to challenge ourselves on a level of digging into our conscious, our subconscious level and seeing what's there and doing the work involved. And that will get us to cross something called the abyss. Now, what is the abyss? If we look at the Kabbalistic tree of life, I'll put it up here. There are 3 Sephiroth, which are the circles up here at the top. Those are very high energy, high frequency levels that we want to attain. What this is telling us is that we want to rise to that level, but there is an abyss that separates them. That's the dashed line right here. That dashed line, it's like a veil, right? You can see the high priestess has this veil, right? That's what she's holding up. She's a key to getting across that abyss. Because if we look at the tree of life, you can see Tippereth right here in the middle. And as you go up, that pathway is represented by, guess what? The high priestess. It is the only pathway that leads straight from the bottom of the tree of life directly up across the abyss. And that's one pathway. Now, in order to do that, this right here, it's futile. The bottom of this card says futility. It's futile to do it with air or intellect alone, even if you go inward with that. There's another part to it. And what is that part? See that wishbone right there? It leads us to another card. It leads us to the 9 of Cups. What do we have on the 9 of Cups? Right there, a wishbone. That wishbone is telling us that, look, bring these 2 things to the center, to the forefront, the heart and the mind. Balance the heart and the mind. Connect the heart and the mind to be where the King of Cups is. To place emphasis on this balance, there's one more thing here that I want to point out. You have this winged figure on a boat, and then you have a peacock feather here on his head. Where else do we see that? On the card that represents balance, adjustment. She has a peacock feather on her head, and she's balancing the heart and the mind. She has a feather that she's balancing and a heart that she's balancing. She's weighing the heart and the mind. So she sits at the abyss. Justice or Mott sits at the abyss before you can cross it to balance, to weigh your heart and your mind to see if you've reached that level, that status of the King of Cups. Now, there was a movie that I saw, and it's weird because you'll see these things and you're like, how do they know this stuff, right? And so it was Moon Knight. And on Moon Knight, I think it's one of the last episodes, Mott is actually in that episode. This is a Marvel movie. And so she's on this boat, right? A boat that looks very similar to the front of this boat right here. She's on this boat. And guess what she's doing on that boat? Moon Knight approaches her and she's like, you can't pass the desert because I have to weigh your heart and your mind. And his mind and his heart was fractured because he had multiple personalities. So he could not cross the abyss. And so he was stuck in the sands. Absolutely fascinating that in the entertainment industry, there are these subtle clues to things that are kind of deep when you think about it. It's like, what do they know, right? They know more than they put on. So I want to get into the element that I want to talk about today, which is astatine. That's kind of a weird name, but it's a very rare element because it's extremely radioactive, meaning it doesn't stick around long. It's continuously breaking down. It only lasts about 8 hours after it's made. And this is the rarest element that appears naturally on Earth, period. And I think that's fitting because I think the position of the King of Cups is extremely rare. I can't say that I know someone that totally has mastered their emotions and their intellect. I feel for me, it's a lifelong journey. If you feel like you've done that, I mean, who's for me to say? But I just feel like for me, it's rare. In fact, this was produced on Earth, but it was only produced by bombarding bismuth with something called a neutrino.
In 1940, researchers artificially recreated astatine by bombarding the isotope bismuth-209 with alpha particles inside a particle accelerator.
Now, bismuth is the Queen of Cups. We talked about that in the last video. So now the particle that they bombarded with is, guess what? Helium, a helium nuclei. Helium represents, guess what? The High Priestess. It's the second element, right? Now, so you're bombarding it with that energy and it's producing the fleeting effects of the King of Cups. So not totally stable, but we can get it for about 8 hours, it'll last, and then that's it. So I think there are times in our lives where we can handle a situation with the energy of the King of Cups, but there's always other things that life can challenge us with that can really test that and balance, see if we really have that heart and mind balanced out, and just see how we're really going to be affected by things and how we're going to respond. So it's a great lesson, something that I think is embedded in the energy of astatine, because astatine gets its name from the Greek root word astatos, which means astatic or unstable.
The rest of them go on for less than a second to a few minutes. I'm guessing that's how it got its name, which translates to unstable. Scientists can't even study it in bulk because its properties disappear as soon as they appear.
So you have, from the very beginning, the root of this being something that is fleeting. So I had a lot of fun with this one, and I'll continue to ponder this card and to work with this energy of this card as I go throughout my life. And I find that it is a really good kind of place to just check in and to see where you're at on this journey as far as balancing things out and really thinking about the heart and the mind. And working with actually all these cards together, the Seven of Swords, the Nine of Cups, the Adjustment card, the High Priestess, the King of Cups, and thinking about how they're connected and how we can make it across that abyss and to get to a certain point in our lives. But thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Will. This is Atypical Tarot, and I'll see you next time.